Early signs are actually the opposite. When people are struggling with their identity, they're actually thinking of taking on a new career, they go all in at work. They take on more. They show up later. It's like an extinction burst. It's a little like when you're married and you go on a million dates right before you get a divorce to prove to yourself that you did everything you could. So managers actually need to learn to look out for some of those warning signs that I talk about that are often kind of things that are not in the zeitgeist. We're not talking about being really engaged in intermittent reinforcement or being on an emotional roller coaster, those kinds of things.
Interesting. One of our fans of our show said that the most recent grads over 4 years have only known a bull market and hiring and hoarding of employees. So how do you deal with the stress of life once that cycle turns and we see unemployment tick up? I mean, Dr. West just got about 25 seconds. I mean, this has been a tight market. How does this stuff change when it's not so easy to leave a job? Just quickly, very quickly.
You really have to be ready to ride that roller coaster. Don't read too much into one emotion that you're feeling. Don't take a job just because of the compensation package that comes along with it. Those things go up and down constantly. That shouldn't be your primary motivator.
All right, gonna leave it there. Dr. Tessa West, professor of psychology at NYU. Her new book, Job Therapy, Finding Work That Works for You. A fan of the show also says you might like your job, but not your co-host. Cough, cough.
Wow. No wonder I didn't get a...
He's a fan of yours.
No wonder I didn't get an ID. Let's get to world and national news. We're a fan of Amy Morris. She's from the Bloomberg 99 newsroom. Hey, Amy.
Hey, Tim, I'm a fan of yours, too. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the White House to discuss the war in Gaza with President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris.
A proud Jewish Zionist, so proud Irish-American Zionist. I want to thank you for 50 years of public service and 50 years of support for the state of Israel.
Biden aiming to get Israel and Hamas to seal a U.S.-backed proposal to release hostages in Gaza over 3 phases as a legacy-affirming achievement. White House officials say the negotiations are in the closing stages, but there is more work to do. White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby says the vice president's meeting with Israel's leader is not unusual.
Vice President has, and I fully expect that over the next 6 months we'll continue to have meetings of our own with foreign leaders. He's met privately with President Zelensky as well and others.
Kirby says President Biden and his team will be busy for the remainder of his term. House Republicans are condemning Vice President Harris for her management of the southern border. That resolution condemning Harris as the Biden administration's border czar passed with support from 6 Democrats. Biden in 2021 selected Harris to lead the administration's efforts to address the root causes of migration. President Biden has also signed into law a bill strengthening oversight of Federal Bureau of Prisons. The Federal Prison Oversight Act establishes an independent ombudsman to field and investigate complaints in the wake of sexual assault and other criminal misconduct by staff, chronic understaffing, escapes, and high-profile deaths. It also requires the Justice Department's Inspector General conduct risk-based inspections of all 122 facilities. Global news 24 hours a day, whenever you want it. With Bloomberg News Now, I'm Amy Morrison. This is Bloomberg.
Get the news you need to start your day in just 15 minutes.
We begin with the 2024 presidential election.
More clues on the future of U.S. interest rates. Wake up with Bloomberg Daybreak, U.S. edition. New tension between the White House and Israel. Shohei Ohtani, 2 home runs. Available now on your podcast feed.
Each weekday morning at 6 a.m. Eastern.
Another day, another record for stocks.
Subscribe to Bloomberg Daybreak, U.S. edition on Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
Bloomberg Radio.
Context changes everything.
This is the Bloomberg Black Business Feed. FarmerLine is using new technology to help farmers across the globe, including in Africa. It developed a special mobile and web platform that's designed to get farmers and other agriculture-related businesses access to information and insights that can make a difference. Oyster is FarmerLine co-founder and CEO. He spoke to Bloomberg about some of the other tools his company provides to give farmers an edge.
We have something called the 911 for farmers. The farmers are able to call a helpline and get access to information in their native language. Products like, organic fertilizer, cook stores, drought-resistant seeds. All these things actually help farmers to also increase their yield, but then also protect the soil and the environment at the same time.
Since launching, FarmerLine says its technology has helped reach nearly 2 million farmers in over 40 countries. I'm Bloomberg's Justin Milliner on the Black Business Feed. Life insurance is one of those things that just about everybody needs, but few people actually have. Hey, if you die unexpectedly without life insurance, guess what? You'll leave your family with even a bigger mess. Life insurance will help replace your family's income. It'll help cover burial expenses. Life insurance can even help pay off debt like credit cards and medical bills. Life insurance can even pay for college. And if you own a business and you die, life insurance can help your business from collapsing. It can even help cover estate taxes. Life insurance has never been more affordable and needed. Plus, you can always shop around even if you have a plan and save some money. So call the Life Insurance Quote Line right now for free pricing information.
800-917-8730. 800-917-8730. 800-917-8730. That's 800-917-8730.
Financial advisors. Are you looking to add or switch custodians? Are you going independent? Interactive Brokers provides lowest cost trading and turnkey custody solutions for all sized firms. Trade globally from a single unified master account with no ticket charges, no custody fees, no minimums, and no tech, platform, or reporting fees. Plus, IBKR has no advisory team or prop trading group to compete with you for your clients. Switch to the custody solutions that work for you at ibkr.com/RIA.
On the latest edition of the Big Take podcast, host Sarah Holder speaks with Bloomberg investigative reporters Caleb Melby and Polly Mawson about the rise in Americans choosing nurse practitioners over doctors and what the shift away from traditional physicians might mean for patient outcomes. They stumbled upon research that could reveal an alarming trend.
Those researchers noted that on average, NPs use more resources but achieved worse patient results as compared to physicians. Now, this is still a working paper that does still have to go through the peer review process, which can be really lengthy, but it is an interesting finding, and it's particularly interesting because it does look at emergency rooms where the stakes are going to be the highest. Polly says the Association of Nurse Practitioners took issue with that paper, in part because it was still being peer-reviewed. The lobbying group also shared another study that looked at patients across 5 countries, including the U.S., and found that NPs can actually improve patient outcomes in an ER setting. I asked Polly and Caleb what they thought the root of the issue here was. And like most problems with our healthcare system, there isn't just one answer. I think it's everything that we've talked about kind of compounded on itself. There's a doctor shortage, there's a increase in these kinds of for-profit educational programs, and there's a completely logical, understandable desire to move away from bedside nursing in some cases. So I think that all of those things combined, along with the many, many eccentricities of the American healthcare system, can cause this. I mean, the reality is that we have a hugely unique, largely for-profit American healthcare system, and it's going to sprout its own very unique problems.
That's what's on the latest edition of the Big Take podcast. Listen to the full episode on Apple, Spotify, the Bloomberg Business app, or anywhere you get your podcast.
Hey, it's 4:40 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. Turned out to be a mixed Thursday. The Dow higher, S&P, NASDAQ both ended in the red. A renewed sell-off in the world's largest tech companies dragged down the stock market again, overshadowing this morning's economic data that bolstered confidence that the Fed will be able to engineer a soft landing. The NASDAQ 100 index down 1.1%. The composite index, NASDAQ composite, down 0.9%. S&P down 27. Choppy session fell 0.5%. A lot of that selling coming in the final hour of trading. The Dow, though, held on to an 81-point gain, up 0.2%. And the Russell 2000 index of small cap shares, again the outperformer, up by 1.3%. The 10-year, 4.24%. The 2-year, 4.43%. Gold down $33 the ounce to $23.63, a drop of 1.4%. West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.8%, $78.17 a barrel. So where to buy in this market? Kathy Entwistle is managing director at Morgan Stanley Private Wealth Management, and she was a guest right here on Bloomberg Business Week.
So there are areas of the stock market where we think there are still opportunities to get some good value, and those would be areas like small stocks or international, global. The U.S. markets are just
overpriced right now, and clearly we have, you know, the Magnificent Seven that's caused a lot of that, but there's other companies overpriced too.
Kathy Entwistle, Morgan Stanley, and again she alluded to the small cap shares. Russell 2000 worth repeating up by 1.3%. So again, recapping, turned out to be a mixed day. The Dow higher, S&P, NASDAQ both ended in the red. A 0.9% drop for the NASDAQ Composite Index. To put that in context, S&P down 0.5%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That's the Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, you're going to thank us for this segment in a big way. Skin cancer. My own family having their own scare recently around this. Many of my extended family have dealt with these concerns. I'm big, I got to say, Tim, on those full body checks. Do it every year.
I got one on Tuesday morning.
You did.
So we got to wear for the summer sunning season. With us is Ashani Weerratne, chair of the Biochemistry and Molecular Biology Department at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. The Bloomberg School of Public Health at Johns Hopkins University is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Ashani, welcome. We got lots and lots of questions for you, so we're so glad to have you with us. I do want to start with sunscreen, though, because we know we're supposed to wear sunscreen every day, regardless of how much time we spend outside. But one thing I don't understand is it okay to wear chemical sunscreen, or should we move completely away from chemical sunscreen and instead use sunscreen with metals in them, like zinc?
That's a great question, and it's a question that a lot of people have concerns about. The truth is that there's no real evidence showing that the chemical sunscreens are dangerous for your health. And what I advise people to do is, if they are really concerned about it, there are so many great lines of UPF clothing that are available now, including long sleeve t-shirts, hats, and that sort of thing. And as you just mentioned, the zinc oxide-based sunscreens are fantastic. So I don't think there's a need to move away from chemical sunscreens because, again, there's no hard evidence that they are dangerous. However, I do think it's important to have other options.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the hats and the long sleeves. You should see me at the beach. I'm no fun to go to the beach with because I just stay under an umbrella and with like long sleeves on the whole time, and I'm grumpy.
Well, you get a gold star from me.
But you know, we do have to put sunblock on our face and on our nose. Like, you recommend a zinc sunscreen over a chemical sunscreen, or we're not at that point?
I honestly do not, because I use chemical sunscreens myself and on my children, and I don't see a need to switch. However, again, if someone is concerned, obviously we have great zinc oxide sunscreen.
What about, though, kind of, like, I'm someone who's embraced kind of the more natural or non-chemical things. They seem to work as well. Do they? Or, like, what's some advice in terms of how we should pick a sunscreen, whether we, aren't so worried about the chemicals in there, or, is there some way of kind of filtering through?
Sure. So the most important, speaking of filtering, the most important thing for a sunscreen is to make sure that it is a broad spectrum sunscreen. It needs to be able to block both UVA rays and UVB rays. So those are two different kinds of UV rays that penetrate different layers of the skin, and it's really, really important to block both of those. So wherever you are looking for a sunscreen, no matter if it is, natural-based, chemical-based, physically based, make sure it says that it's a broad-spectrum sunscreen. I would also stick with the sunscreens that are FDA regulated, because they are safe and they have been tested to do what they're supposed to.
How do you know if a sunscreen is FDA regulated?
It will usually say it.
It will say it on it. What about, like, SPF 10, SPF 30, SPF 1,000,000? Like, is there a point where it's just ridiculous?
Yeah, so actually, we recommend anything that is SPF 30 is probably just fine. You'll see SPF 50, SPF 70. All that means is that you can stay out longer in the sun without reapplying. But the truth is, SPF 30 is probably, at this point in time, SPF 30 is a completely comfortable SPF factor with which to stick if you're interested in it.
But if you're really fair, like, would you suggest that you go for a higher SPF?
So
No, because the higher SPF you go, it's not a linear increase, if you will, in protection. So my advice would be, rather than go for an SPF 70, buy an SPF 30, but reapply more often and consistently. We suggest that you reapply, especially if you're sweating or swimming, at least every 80 to 90 minutes when you're out in the sun, which I don't think most people do, because I have so many people say, oh, we put our sunblock on, but we still got burned. And then I ask them, did you reapply? And often they say, no.
This is a real question. I'm not just asking this because this is what I deal with every morning. But truly, why is it so difficult to put sunscreen on kids? And what are some good strategies to get kids not to scream at you when you're trying to put sunscreen on?
You know, honestly, it is a challenge. I remember when my daughter was in kindergarten, I got all the kids to the point in her class where they would just line up in front of me, and I would cover them with
Can you come over tomorrow morning?
What's that?
Can you come over tomorrow morning?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be there.
Yeah,
So again, with kids, you know, there's these great lines